It was the last song of the night in 1984. The lights had just come on, and no one wanted to leave the gym. The disco ball was still spinning slowly, throwing quiet reflections across the floor. And for a moment, every person in that room knew the same feeling. That this was the end of something they would never get back. The paper streamers were falling down, the punch bowl was almost empty, and the janitor was already waiting by the door. But the couples kept swaying as if one more minute could stop time. If you were there, you remember it. The smell of hairspray and cologne, the sound of dress shoes on the polished floor, and the strange mix of excitement and sadness that only a school dance could create. He had arrived 2 hours earlier, pretending not to care, leaning against the wall with his friends, laughing louder than he felt, checking the clock more than anyone noticed. Across the room she stood with her friends, adjusting the sleeve of her dress, trying to look confident while secretly hoping someone would ask her to dance before the fast songs ended. The DJ played upbeat tracks that kept everyone moving but saying nothing, because the real conversations in those days didn't happen during the loud music. They happened when the slow song finally came, and the lights softened just enough to make courage possible. All night they watched each other in the way teenagers did back then, never directly, always through reflections in the glass trophy case or between the shoulders of other dancers. It was a quiet conversation made of glances and almost smiles, the kind that felt enormous even though nothing had actually happened. He told himself he would walk over after the next song, and then after the next one, and then after the next one, until time started running faster than his bravery. Around them, couples were forming and dissolving. Shoes were being kicked off under the bleachers. Chaperones were pretending not to see the hands held a little too tightly, and the night kept moving forward whether he was ready or not. When the final slow song began, the entire room seemed to exhale at once. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. The last chance before the lights came on. The last chance to become the version of yourself you had imagined while getting ready in front of the mirror at home. He walked across the floor feeling the weight of every step, aware of the music, the watching eyes that probably weren't watching at all, and the possibility that she might say no. She turned toward him before he even spoke, as if she had been expecting him the whole time, and that small detail stayed with him for decades afterward because it changed the story in his mind from one of fear to one of almost fate. They didn't talk much while they danced, because in those days the dance itself was the conversation. His hands were careful, respectful, unsure. Hers were warm and steady, and together they moved in that slow, side-to-side rhythm that every person from that generation remembers in their muscles even now. The song felt endless and fragile, like something that could break if either of them said the wrong thing. So they let silence do the work, surrounded by other memories being created at the same time. Friendships ending, romances beginning, promises being made that would be kept by some and forgotten by others. When the music stopped and the lights fully returned, reality stepped back into the room. Names were called, rides were waiting, cameras flashed for one last photo that would sit in a box for 40 years before being found again on a quiet afternoon. They walked in opposite directions without exchanging phone numbers, without making plans, without knowing that this brief, ordinary dance would become one of the clearest memories of their youth. It was not the beginning of a lifelong romance, not a dramatic goodbye, just a single slow song shared at the end of a school year. And that was exactly why it lasted. Years later, whenever he heard a song from the mid-'80s playing in a grocery store or on the radio during a long drive home, he would see that gymnasium again, the decorations, the nervous laughter, the courage it took to cross a room, and the feeling that life was still wide open and waiting. He would remember that for one song he had not stood by the wall, that for one song he had been part of the dance floor instead of an observer, and that sometimes a single moment is enough to carry an entire era inside it. And somewhere, he always wondered if she remembered it too. Not as a life-changing event, but as a small, perfect piece of a night when everyone was young, the music was slow, and leaving the dance floor felt like leaving childhood behind forever. Do you remember the last slow song you danced to before the lights came on?